So, thousands of years ago, uh, a king essentially wrote a survival guide for the human ego.
Which is something we desperately need today, honestly.
Right. I mean, he argued that the ultimate sign of weakness is actually, speaking your truth in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, that definitely goes against the grain of most modern advice.
It completely does. And he claimed that the absolute most dangerous trap you could possibly step into is trying to please the crowd.
The whole fear of public opinion.
Exactly. So have you ever considered that the most cutting-edge strategies for emotional intelligence and leadership might actually date back millennia?
It's a pretty humbling thought.
It really is. Because, you are constantly bombarded by thought leaders telling you how to optimize your morning routine.
Oh, the endless morning routines.
Yeah, or influencers selling you the secret to emotional regulation.
And leadership gurus with their shiny new 10-step frameworks that will supposedly change your life.
It is just utterly exhausting. But what if the blueprint already exists?
Well, it's a profoundly humbling realization when you step back from all that modern noise.
Yeah.
You see that the human condition hasn't actually evolved all that much. I mean, we are still wrestling with the exact same internal psychological battles.
The same ego traps.
Exactly. The same leadership failures that people fought thousands of years ago in ancient kingdoms. The ancient world was just as chaotic.
They just didn't have smartphones to broadcast it to the world.
Precisely. They dealt with the same stuff.
And that is the mission of our deep dive today. We are exploring the ancient wisdom found in Proverbs 29, a text traditionally connected to King Solomon.
A really fascinating source.
It is. Our goal is to synthesize these timeless teachings, not just as historical artifacts, but as brilliant behavioral science.
Right, seeing how it actually works in practice.
Exactly. We want to discover how this ancient psychology practically applies to the complexities of your modern life. And most importantly, explore how it can ultimately strengthen your trust and relationship with God.
Which is the core of it all.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when you actually read the source text, it doesn't read like a gentle, coddling, modern self-help book.
Not at all.
It is brutally direct.
Very direct. And that bluntness is entirely by design. This text is essentially a masterclass in contrast.
Meaning it doesn't give you a lot of middle ground.
Right. It doesn't give you 10 shades of gray. It constantly pits two opposing ways of living against each other to force a decision.
Like a mirror.
Exactly. On one side, you have wise leadership, humility, and righteous living.
And on the other.
You see the absolute, predictable chaos created by pride, corruption, and uncontrolled emotion. It is holding up a mirror and asking you to clearly identify the mechanics of the path you are currently walking down.
And before anyone can even think about effectively leading others or impacting society or, changing the world, this text insists that they must first master themselves.
That is where the foundation is poured. You can't lead others if you can't lead yourself. It's so true. So let's start with how we handle criticism and our own internal emotional weather. There is a line right out of the gate that just hits incredibly hard.
Oh, verse 1.
Yeah, it states that someone who is often reproved or corrected but hardens their neck will suddenly be destroyed and without remedy.
It is a stark, almost terrifying warning, really.
That's all.
The ancient meaning here is deeply rooted in the psychology of teachability.
Huh.
Wisdom literature from this era placed a massive premium on being correctable.
Right, because a stubborn refusal to learn doesn't just hold you back.
No, it actively invites disaster. Think about the physical metaphor of hardening the neck.
Like an animal.
Yes, it's an animalistic image of a beast of burden violently resisting the reins. And when we look at the modern application, the mechanics of this are identical.
How so?
Well, in careers or marriages or leadership roles, people who refuse feedback or avoid accountability almost always repeat harmful patterns.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
They create a structural weakness in their lives until eventually, under pressure, something just snaps. So, is hardening your neck to correction like putting black tape over the check engine light in your car?
That's a perfect analogy.
Because if you actively ignore the warning signs, you don't magically fix the engine. You just guarantee that eventually the engine blows up while you're driving on the highway.
Exactly. Or, as the text says, you're suddenly destroyed.
And the real tragedy is that you had the warnings. The reproof was flashing right there on the dashboard.
But you chose to look away.
Right. But I have to ask, how do we actually train ourselves to welcome that reproof instead of getting instantly defensive?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because human nature is to protect the ego. When someone critiques us, our heart rate spikes, and we immediately want to fight back.
What's fascinating here is that the ancients understood this knee-jerk defensiveness perfectly. They recognized that our immediate biological emotional reactions are almost always our biggest liability.
Wow.
That is why what we now call emotional intelligence was a core tenet of ancient wisdom long before modern psychology gave it a clinical name.
They were way ahead of us.
They really were. The text makes a brutal assessment of people who lack this restraint. It notes that a fool utters all his mind, but a wise man keeps it in till afterward.
Wait, I have to push back on that idea of keeping your thoughts in. Doesn't repressing your emotions just lead to a psychological explosion later?
It's a fair question, especially today.
Right, because modern therapy and contemporary culture constantly tell us we need to express our feelings.
We hear it all the time.
We celebrate speaking your truth and venting as the ultimate form of authenticity. Is this ancient text just telling us to swallow our anger and pretend everything is fine?
Yeah.
Because that sounds incredibly unhealthy.
That is a crucial distinction to make. The text isn't advocating for oppression. It is advocating for processing over reacting.
Okay, what's the difference there?
There is a massive psychological difference. When the text says a wise man keeps it in till afterward, the key word is afterward.
So it's a delay.
Exactly. It means delaying the response until the prefrontal cortex, the logical part of the brain, can catch up with the amygdala, the emotional center.
That makes a lot of sense.
Neuroscience actually shows us today that when you vent anger aggressively in the heat of the moment, you aren't emptying an emotional tank. You are paving a neural pathway.
Oh, wow. So you're just training yourself to be angry.
Precisely. You are rehearsing and amplifying the anger. Venting often makes you more angry, not less.
So uttering all your mind in a moment of rage is essentially prioritizing a cheap, temporary emotional release over the long-term structural health of your relationships or your career.
You nailed it. Uncontrolled anger and unchecked impulsive speech were seen as radioactive to ancient communities.
And they still are today.
Absolutely. Today, we know that responding thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively is the absolute bedrock of conflict resolution.
So the wise person processes the emotion internally first.
Right. They sit with the discomfort of the anger without acting on it, and then they address the actual issue with a clear, strategic head. True strength isn't volume. True strength is restraint.
Which requires a massive, almost painful amount of humility.
It really does.
You have to be humble enough in the moment to admit to yourself, my immediate burning emotional reaction might not actually be the objective truth.
You have to force that pause.
You have to pause. And here is where the narrative naturally transitions. Because once you actually begin to establish that kind of personal self-control.
Once you stop reacting impulsively.
Exactly. People start to trust you. You naturally gain influence. That internal mastery inevitably spills over into how you interact with society.
Mastering your anger forces you into a position of leadership, whether you asked for it or not.
Yeah. So let's talk about that societal impact.
Yes, the ideas collide perfectly here. The text moves very fluidly from the private heart to the public square.
Because personal character is the undisputed engine of public leadership.
Right. When you become a person of restraint, you become a stabilizing force. There's a fascinating observation in the text that when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn.
When the text talks about an authority or a king establishing a land, today that's you establishing the culture in your household.
Or setting the tone for your team at work.
Right, or leading a neighborhood committee. But the text gets very specific about how that leadership fails.
It does. It notes that a leader establishes a land by justice, but someone who receives gifts, meaning corruption or bribery, overthrows it.
It also emphasizes that the righteous consider the cause of the poor, while the wicked don't even care to know it. But why use the word overthrows?
It's a strong word.
Yeah. How exactly does bribery or a lack of empathy structurally destroy a community?
Because corruption isn't just a private moral failing, it is a systemic acid. Bribery overthrows a land because it completely destroys the mechanism of public trust.
Trust is everything.
It is. Think about it economically and socially. If justice or resources go strictly to the highest bidder, contracts mean nothing.
Merit means nothing.
Exactly. The vulnerables are exploited, and the average citizen realizes that playing by the rules is a fool's errand.
Innovation stops. Cooperation dies.
Right. In ancient kingdoms, the blast radius of a ruler's character was immense. It literally dictated whether people ate or starved.
And today, leadership ethics still completely dictate the psychological safety and productivity of our organizations.
Without a doubt. If a manager lacks that internal foundation of humility we just discussed, the environment becomes toxic.
Yeah.
The people literally mourn.
And what actually dictates the direction of that leadership, what keeps it from becoming corrupt, is something the text calls vision.
Ah, verse 18.
Right. There is a highly quoted line in this collection. Where there is no vision, the people perish, but he that keepeth the law, happy is he.
A very famous proverb.
No, I hear this all the time, but I really want to challenge the modern corporate hijacking of this word.
Oh, please do.
We hear vision used in startup culture constantly. It's a 5-year revenue plan. It's a strategy to capture market share. It's a mood board.
Yeah, vision boards and slide decks.
Exactly. But looking at the second half of that sentence, it directly ties vision to keeping the law. So does vision in this context have absolutely nothing to do with business ambition.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you're absolutely right to challenge that.
So it's not about a revenue goal.
Not at all. The corporate hijacking of the word reduces it to mere strategic ambition. You can have brilliant business acumen and a genius 5-year plan, but if you lack what this text calls vision, your culture will still implode.
Wow. So what did it mean back then?
In the ancient context, vision meant prophetic revelation. It meant moral instruction and divine guidance.
It was an ethical framework.
Yes, it was a clear, unyielding understanding of God's objective truth and ethical boundaries.
So it was a moral compass, not a destination.
Exactly. Without that kind of moral vision, communities become disorganized. The literal translation of perish in some ancient contexts implies being cast off or running wild without restraint.
Like taking the brakes off a car.
Right. They lose their ethical anchoring and fall apart. True vision is about having guiding, unshakable principles that help families, companies, and societies make wise, ethical decisions.
Even when making the right choice actually costs them something.
Especially then. It is the framework that prevents the corruption we just talked about.
It is the difference between aiming for outward success and aiming for deep alignment with what is objectively right. Keeping the law, maintaining integrity, that is the mechanism that actually makes a person or a culture stable and blessed in the long run.
It creates true resilience.
So let's track the logic here. We know we need to stop putting black tape over the check engine light and welcome correction.
Right.
We know we need the emotional restraint to process anger rather than vent it. And we know we need a moral vision to lead ethically rather than just chasing ambition.
We logically know all of this.
It makes perfect sense. So why is it so incredibly rare? What actually derails us from acting on this wisdom?
That is the ultimate question. What stops us? And the text provides a profoundly insightful answer. The single most pervasive obstacle to living a life of righteous, restrained leadership is the paralyzing pressure of public opinion.
It is the fear of what other people think.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The text declares, "The fear of man bringeth a snare, but whoso putteth his trust in the Lord shall be safe."
Such a powerful image.
The imagery of a snare is brilliant, but I want to make sure we understand exactly how that metaphor works. A snare isn't just a cage you get locked in.
No, it's not a box.
It's a hidden wire noose.
Yeah.
What is the actual mechanism of a snare, and why is that the perfect metaphor for public opinion?
The insidious thing about a snare trap is that it uses the animal's own momentum and weight against it.
Okay, how so?
When an animal stepped into a snare, the noose catches. But the trap doesn't actively strangle the animal strangles itself.
Oh, wow.
The harder the creature struggles, the more frantically it pulls to get free, the tighter the wire cinches around its neck.
That is terrifying.
It is, and that is exactly how the fear of public opinion works psychologically.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, today? What does it mean for someone who is feeling immense pressure, whether that is from social media algorithms constantly telling them how they should look and think?
Or workplace politics demanding they compromise their core convictions to get a promotion.
Exactly.
This raises an important question, and it pivots us directly to the core spiritual focus of its entire deep dive.
How so?
When you live in fear of public opinion, when you base your choices on the anticipated reactions of the crowd, you are stepping into the snare.
You're putting your own neck in the wire.
Yes. And the harder you hustle for approval, the more frantically you try to manage your image to please everyone, the tighter the anxiety grips you.
You can't breathe.
Right. The text observes that many seek the ruler's favor, meaning they constantly try to appease whoever holds social or economic power over them.
You become a chameleon.
You really do. You change your ethics based on who is in the room. It promises you safety and belonging, but the mechanism of the trap actually delivers complete captivity.
Because the goalposts of public opinion are constantly moving. You can never, ever perfectly please the crowd.
The crowd is fickle.
If you build your entire identity on the applause of people, you will inevitably be destroyed by their criticism.
It is an exhausting, hollow way to live.
You are constantly terrified of being canceled or overlooked or judged. You are trapped in the wire noose. So how do we actually get out of it?
You step out of the trap by fundamentally shifting your understanding of who holds the ultimate verdict over your life.
Gauging the judge.
Exactly. The text offers the way out. It says, "Every man's judgment cometh from the Lord."
Wow.
When you truly internalize that concept, it reorients your entire reality. You stop seeking the ruler's favor because you realize the ruler, the crowd, the boss, the algorithm doesn't actually have the final say.
God does.
Yes, God does.
That drastically deepens our trust in God because it turns him from a distant concept into our immediate daily refuge.
He becomes the only audience that matters.
When you trust that your safety and your ultimate judgment come entirely from the Creator, you begin to view him as your sole source of truth in a totally chaotic, opinion-driven world.
You can finally stop performing.
You don't have to desperately pull against the snare anymore. The fear of man loses its suffocating grip because the fear of the Lord, which is a deep, reverent trust in his ultimate authority and goodness, takes its place.
It is the ultimate psychological and spiritual liberation. A person who puts their trust in the Lord is safe.
And safe doesn't mean comfortable, right?
Exactly. Now, that doesn't mean they are insulated from physical harm or financial loss or the very real sting of worldly criticism. It means they are safe in their soul.
Their identity is completely secure and untouchable.
And this is how all of this ancient wisdom beautifully comes full circle.
It's all connected. The behavior stems from the belief.
Exactly. Why would you possess the humility to accept harsh correction? Because you trust God's design for your growth more than you trust your own ego.
Right. And why would you hold your tongue and process your anger instead of venting it?
Because you value the peace God commands over your own immediate petty vindication.
And why would you lead a company or a family with ethical justice instead of chasing corrupt shortcuts?
Because you know God sees the vulnerable and holds leaders accountable. The individual foundation of emotional intelligence, the societal impact of moral vision, and the ultimate test of public pressure, it all resolves in trusting the Creator over the crowd.
It is a single, perfectly cohesive behavioral and spiritual framework for living.
It really is brilliant.
To distill everything we've explored today, this ancient wisdom is challenging you to embrace painful teachability over fragile pride.
It is challenging you to process your emotions rather than weaponizing them.
It is asking you to lead your sphere of influence with an unshakable moral vision.
And ultimately, it is presenting you with a stark choice between two paths: the enduring, quiet safety of trusting God, or the suffocating, exhausting snare of fearing people.
And this framework provides profound clarity when the modern world feels incredibly murky.
It reminds us that human nature hasn't changed one bit, and therefore the cure for our deepest struggles hasn't changed either.
And that is exactly why this matters for you listening right now. These ancient proverbs aren't just a dusty historical text meant to be analyzed in a university library or briefly skimmed on a Sunday.
No, they are highly practical.
They are highly sophisticated, daily operational manual. They are the blueprint for living a stable, emotionally intelligent life built on unshakable values.
When the noise of modern advice feels overwhelming, this ancient wisdom cuts right through the static.
So we want to leave you with the single most important question of this entire deep dives. How will you apply this information in your life?
That's the real test.
Think back to that bookstore analogy at the very beginning, wading through endless self-help strategies, looking for a way to fix the exhaustion and the chaos.
The answer isn't a new psychological life hack.
The answer is ancient obedience and profound trust.
Absolutely.
If the fear of man is indeed a hidden snare that uses your own struggle against you, what is one trap of public pressure you are currently caught in without even realizing it?
Where are you currently hustling for the crowd's approval?
And what would it look like practically to stop struggling, step out of the snare, and hand the key to that trap over to God today?